Good evening. Today we are continuing on our tour of Australia. We're going to be getting our trunkies on. We're going to go down some water slides. That's right, we're going to FLUME town. And there we have it. Let's run it from the top.
What I would do to take away this fear of being loved, allegiance to the pain. Now I'm messed up and I'm missing you. I'll never be like you. I would give anything to change this fickle-minded heart that loves fake shiny things. Now I'm messed up and I'm missing you. I'll never be like you. I'm only, can't you say I made a mistake? Please just look me in my face, tell me everything's okay. 'Cause I got it. I'll never be like you. I'm only, can't you say I made a mistake? Please just look me in my face, tell me everything's okay. 'Cause I got it. I'll never be like you.
So we're at 172 beats per minute and we are in A sharp minor. And our chords are the same pretty much for the whole song. We're starting on the 1, the A sharp, the 3, which is the C sharp, the 6, which is the F sharp, and the 7, which is the G sharp. And all of these are pretty much just triads, but I've spread them over quite a few octaves just to give it a little bit more of a FLUME kind of vibe. So let's start from the beginning. I've just got this little ambience that I made in Vital. It's just a saw wave with a filter being affected by this envelope here. There's some chorus and some distortion, and that is literally it. And then we have these little intro hats. So to make them a little bit more FLUME, a little bit weirder, he always does some super experimental things with his production. And one is using delays and echoes in quite interesting ways. So I've got 2 separate channels. One has got the delay time of 159 milliseconds, and that dry wet is almost at 50%. And then the next channel is at 74 milliseconds. So each hit has a different delay on it. So that makes it a bit more interesting. And one thing to keep note is, in these parts especially, when there's no vocals, I've got some really weird effects going on. So again, just helps to add to that weirdness and give it a bit more of a FLUME vibe. So the first time we introduce our chords, we are coming in with these tabs here, which is a silent patch that I found with a little bit of reverb on there as well. And then these saws. So that's super simple. It is just a saw wave with some noise on there and a fair amount of process. And I've got some hyper on there, some flanger, some chorus. All is contributing to that kind of weird reverby kind of vibe that it has. So it doesn't feel like the saw is like so in your face. It just sort of sets it apart a little bit. So without all of those, sort of a little bit too in your face. So I just added those to widen it a bit and set it back in the mix a little bit as well. And then we've got this LFO one, which is affecting the cutoff. So as time goes on, this slowly ducks down a little bit. Just gives it a little bit of movement, and I've done some EQing on there as well. And then I've got this ARP, which is just one sequence of notes with a delay on it. So it was just a random group of notes that I tried out and sounded good. So I've got a Serum Stock Glassy preset, so that's in Serum 1 Glassy. And then we've got this delay on there, so it's on 16, dry wet is up by 40, and feedback's at 50. And then we are introducing this 808. It is just a hip hop 808 that I found. Got some distortion on there, a little bit of EQ and a filter. And then I felt like it needed to be a little bit more crunchy, so I put this decapitator on it. So this was without any processing. So decapitator. And then I've got this serum effects, so I've just added a load of hyper and flanges and choruses just to weird it up a bit and sort of set it a little bit wider. So with all of these, has a little bit more of an unusual sound to it. So I felt like that took us down the FLUME route a little bit more.
What I would do to take away this fear of being loved, allegiance to the pain. Now I'm messed up.
So as this vocal comes in, the only thing that we're leaving in is this ambience. And then we've introduced these bells. So again, this is a Serum factory preset in ARPs, kalimba ARPs, and then I'm just automating the ARP rate to give it a bit more of a granular feel, which is the kind of thing that FLUME does. So that ARP rate changing just helps the movement a lot and makes it feel a bit more real. And initially I had these saws in this section like this.
Take away this fear of being loved, allegiance to the pain. Now
I just felt they were overshadowing the vocal a little bit, and it was a little bit more impactful to come down to a lot less when those vocal comes in, because it sort of gives it a bit more of a moment. So I took those out and we're just keeping in those bells and this ambience.
what I would do to take away this fear of being loved, allegiance to the pain. Now I'm messed up and I'm missing you. I'll never be like you. I would give anything to change this fickle-minded heart that loves fake shiny things. Now I'm messed up.
So in that little transition, we've got this little trap hat. And I chose that one again. It's a bit weird sounding, it's super wide, so I just cut that up a little bit. And then we've got these strings. Again, this is a Serum factory, so string and string ensemble alleghi. And I've just taken those low notes out, so there's not too many of those low frequencies muddying it up, because we've got that bass coming in this section as well.
Anything to change this fickle-minded heart that loves fake shiny things. Now
So we're just using that 808 as a sub pretty much, so they're just doing those long hanging notes.
anything to change this fickle-minded heart that loves fake shiny things. Now I'm messed up and I'm missing you. I'll never be like you. I'm only can't you say I made a mistake? Please just look me in my face, tell me everything's okay, 'cause I got it. Ooh, I'll never be like you.
So for our drums, again, shows a really weird kick. So if I play that without shaper box, it's super unusual. It's got that weird, almost vocal thing on top of it. So just shaper box that a little bit to take those highs out. But it still sounds pretty unusual, and it hits a bit like a future bass kind of kick. So that's the sort of sound I wanted to emulate. And then we've got a pretty live sounding snare. Got some shakers. And we've got a couple of hats. And what I did was I extracted the groove from these shakers and applied that groove to these hats. So down here, once you've extracted it, you can press on that groove, and the groove of the hat and the shaker will line up a little bit better. These notes are in pretty straight, but we're taking the swing from these shakers, so it all sounds a little bit more cohesive. So we've got these little bits of percussion here where we're doing some double notes of the snare and some little ghost notes. And then we've got this house hat, which is just doing those offbeats that. And so the bass in this section is a patch that I found. I've done a few little changes to. It's pretty much a couple of saw waves, and it's being distorted pretty hard. And I've got an extra decapitator on there, and I didn't want to make it too weird like we did with the first 808. I tried a similar thing, but it felt a little bit too muddy. It wasn't sort of clear enough. So this one we've just kept a pretty standard down the line sine wave.
Can't you say I made a mistake?
And then we have these chords in the drop. Very Flume sounding. Again, very simple. We've got a sub at -2. We've got a triangle at -2 with a fine tune up 20. We have got a sine wave at -1 and up 50. And all unisons are 1. We've got a little bit of noise, and the comb filter does quite a lot of work in this. So it gives it a really different timbre to the sound. And if we take out these effects, it's a little bit flat. So with those, and particularly the hyperdimension and the distortion, sort of widens it out a bit and crunches up a little bit. And then our envelope 1 is affecting the level of our noise as well, so it gives it that little bit of movement.
Can't you say I made a mistake? Please just look me in my face. Tell me everything's okay. 'Cause I got it. Ooh, I'll never be like you. I'm only
And with some of these little skips and transitions in the drums, Flume does do some really lazy swings for all of his drums, but his kicks, I've noticed it quite a lot. So we've done a similar thing here. We've just really swung these few kicks here. So if they were on beat, they'd be here, and we've just taken them back quite a lot. And then we have a little tom fill, again swung a little bit behind the beat. And then we've got a kick roll going into that second part of the drop. And again, they're slightly swung, so the second and the fourth are just a little bit behind the beat. And then we just introduce this arm and break. Just cut it up a little bit just to fit the vibe of the rest of the drums. And then in the second half, I've just added these little stabs from a sample. Put some micro shift on there just to widen them out and make them sound a little bit more interesting. And it's a bit of a counter melody to what those drop chords are doing. So it's just a sort of extra layer of harmony just to make that second half a little bit more interesting. And with a lot of Flume stuff, you can hear that he's ducking quite a lot to the kick. So I've used kickstart in this case. I'd normally do shaper box, but because we want a really drastic sound, we're ducking all of the frequencies when we sidechain. So we're not doing what I normally do with shaper box and do sort of half and half with lows and highs. We're just using kickstart because the whole of the frequency spectrum is being affected. So I've got all of the tops are being sidechained to the kick super quickly, so you can't really hear it that much, but it just helps that kick to punch through a little bit. And then the bass is really obvious, so we're not even getting it tight, we're letting it hang beyond the kick like we've done here. So here we've got this little gap, so it really makes it obvious. And throughout the song, I felt like the synths were overshadowing the vocal in some parts. So I've used this track spacer. So I've got that on the synth group, and it is being sidechained to the vocal. So just this little section of the frequency spectrum is being ducked out when the vocals are playing. So it just helps to get out of the way a little bit. So if I play with and without.
Anything to change, this fickle-minded heart, they lost fake shiny things.
And with.
Anything to change, this fickle-minded heart, they lost fake shiny things.
It's really subtle, but you can just hear vocals a little bit more clearly. They're not fighting so much with those synths. So little things like that, kind of easy ways to help give you separation in your track. Something like track spacer, you could even do it with a soothe or something like that. And that's going right through the song. So even in the drop, we're still having that same thing happen.
Can't you say I made a mistake? Please just look me in my face. Tell me everything's okay. 'Cause I got it.
And there we have it. I know Flume doesn't really make much drum and bass, but I kind of wanted to do a drum and bass song if Flume were going to do it with his sort of typical sounds. So I hope I have delivered, and I do hope it has helped. Thank you very much for watching, and love to your mothers.